Who is smarter? Steve Jobs or Rowan Atkinson? Okay, so this may be a trick question, and it already popped up, but Rowan is way smarter because he's got a ridiculously smart IQ of 178. If I was going to describe Rowan with one word, it would definitely be comical. But if I was going to describe Steve with one word, it would be inspirational. You see, Steve inspired me to take those next steps of entrepreneurship, regardless of having a specific education or degree, because he didn't graduate college. Now, I'm not saying that education or IQ is irrelevant, but what I am saying is that everybody in this room is coming from a different background, trying to innovate, and that's okay. Steve once said that everything around you that you call life was made up by people no smarter than you, and you can change it. Think about that for a minute. Everything around you that you call life was made up by people no smarter than you, and you can change it. It's not that everybody's so much smarter than us, and that's good news. I used to think innovation had everything to do with intelligence, so I wanted to be the smart guy in the room. But listening to Steve, however, he's saying it's something more than just intelligence alone. What is it? I'm going to suggest today that it's inspiration. But inspiration alone is almost kind of like this overused cliche of sorts, kind of like those cheesy inspirational posters that you see in some offices, and I guarantee some of you have in your offices here today. But I want to talk about what inspiration does. Here it is. Inspiration breeds tenacity. And tenacity is that magical ingredient which gives you the ability to push through challenging circumstances to innovation. One of my first inspirations was visiting the National Museum of the United States Air Force as a kid. And I remember driving down that long drive, if anybody's ever been there, and you have these huge hangars, and you're getting closer, and the hangars are getting bigger, and as a kid, you know you're looking out the back window, and you're getting more excited as you're getting closer. And then you park, you run inside, you take a few turns, and there they are. Airplanes everywhere. They're on the ceiling, they're on the floor, some are coming out of the wall. They're not just fake anymore, they're real. They're not just on a TV or a movie set. I would understand years later how Wilbur Wright would write about Otto Lilienthal's unquenchable enthusiasm, how it infected him. That's how he said it. You see, Otto Lilienthal was an aviator who died in an accident before the Wright brothers, inspiring them to take their next steps in aviation. So what happened? I grew up a little bit, went to vocational school for electronics engineering, and then started working on airplanes. I worked on military, commercial, civilian, over 40 different platforms in 7 years, living in 10 different states. And then I shifted my career to writing aircraft maintenance manuals. Anybody like to write maintenance manuals? Well, actually, I did, and then the reason is because it was about airplanes. I loved aviation. I shifted my career one more time, working for one of my dream jobs, which was at NASA. I was able to get into so many crazy things and projects there. I was able to take apart equipment that had spent years in space for analysis. I was able to help train astronauts like Koichi Wakata, Michael Fink, and Kate P. Heyer and how to perform on-orbit maintenance instructions that I just finished writing. I was able to, oh, there they are, and me. And then I was able to also sit in the neutral buoyancy lab in one of the world's largest indoor pools in the mission control room and watch the astronauts perform the on-orbit maintenance procedures training in that pool that I just finished writing. It was a great experience, and I eventually moved on to working as a consultant in the space industry. So what happens? I moved back to Dayton, Ohio afterwards, and something fun happened. These many years later, I'm walking back through that museum that we just talked about, and I see something familiar. It's one of those shuttle trainers that was in Building 9 at the Johnson Space Center where I was working at. Here I am now, these many years later, staring face to face with something that was inspirational in a job previously in the place that started it all, in this museum. By this time, I had worked over 25 jobs by the age of 35, which is ridiculous. But I was ready to get into something else I was inspirational about, which was entrepreneurship. And this story starts a little bit differently. It starts with somebody very special to me, which is my grandfather. He immigrated from Greece in the early 1900s to the United States. I don't know exactly what year he came here, but I do know that he worked in the steel industry in Ohio in a very difficult time that would have been working in the steel industry, up until about when he was 45 years old. At that time is when he ended up marrying my grandmother and starting a grocery store. He started the business with a good friend of his. I wish I could have asked him, why did you start a business at age 45? Like, why now? Or what were some of the big issues that you ran into when you were trying to start your business? You see, I wasn't able to ask him these questions because he passed away before I was born by about 5 years. In spite of this, he was still inspirational to me to take those next steps in entrepreneurship, regardless of age or degree or piece of paper. My journey in entrepreneurship would be very different than his. I remember my first idea. I just recently purchased a new car and wanted to put a license plate cover on it for whatever reason, and I bought this little kit, and I assembled these letters and words, and here's what it said. I love it when you look. So how cheesy is that? So people would pull up beside me and they'd ask me, where'd you get your license plate cover? And I had this crazy idea, if people are asking for it, maybe I should sell it. So I put it on some t-shirts and decided to sell this as a silly phrase. It was fun for a while, but I eventually gave it up because I didn't really believe what it stood for. I would go on to fail and try 4 more businesses before getting and co-founding the business that I'm in today. 4 more times. The latest business, I would move from aviation into coffee. And then I would also, not even just coffee, but water for coffee. We had discovered that the water you're using for drinking your coffee at home is ruining your experience. We came up with an idea of providing a mineral packet that was specially engineered that you would add to distilled water and then use that to brew your coffee. Within 8 months of launching this business, we had successfully funded a Kickstarter campaign and found ourselves nervously standing in California on the set of Shark Tank. We couldn't even provide a year's worth of sales figures yet, and here we are arguing for 30 minutes with these 5 investors trying to get their attention. Everybody's dropping out, except for one, Barbara. I remember looking down at her notes and then looking up at Taylor and I, and she said, there's something about you guys I really like. I think you're straight shooters. And then she gave us the deal. Now, after all this, I want to take a step back and share a statistic. I'm sure most of you have seen something like this. First, 90% of first businesses fail. But have you seen this one, that 90% of second businesses succeed? And what's even crazier is that 80% of business owners will never know because they will never try again. Let's go back to that first question and find a better answer. Who is smarter? Who cares? Just like Steve said, everything around you that you call life is made up by people no smarter than you, and you can change it. Innovation doesn't have to be about that piece of paper on the wall or your measured IQ, but it can be created by discovering your inspirations, which give you the tenacity to help you change the world.